Alright, today let's make our own Doritos. Now today's video is all about that cheesy powder that covers these golden triangles. And we're gonna make our own nacho powder today by dehydrating our own cheese and frying our own tortillas. Alright, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So first, for our nacho powder, we're gonna need some cheese. We want to begin shredding this cheese, and I'm using a block of about 200 grams or 8 ounces. However, I'm only gonna end up using half of this. The other half's gonna go towards next week's video, which I'm gonna talk about at the end of this video. So in total for this recipe, all you need is 4 ounces or about 100 grams of cheese. Now, the flavor of Doritos is actually called nacho cheese, which may be either the traditional Colby or also could come from a more modern processed cheese. However, I'm gonna be using a cheddar cheese here, which will give a little bit of sharpness and flavor. However, you do you, and if you want to use some Velveeta, this is definitely the time for it. Now with our cheese shredded, we need to dehydrate this cheese, and we're actually going to do this in 2 steps. Firstly, just place the shredded cheese onto a rack and into the dehydrator and let it go for about 12 to 24 hours. At which point, we'll have pulled a lot of the moisture out of the cheese, and it should look something like this. Now, this cheese will be a little oily, and we're gonna need to sop a little bit of that up using some paper towels. Now, with my cheese, I noticed that even after using the paper towels, there was still some moisture inside. And this is probably due to the fact that I had a larger shred that I used. So to help kind of combat this, I decided to grind this dehydrated cheese powder into a mortar and pestle, creating small granules. Now I took that cheese powder and placed it into the dehydrating tray with some aluminum foil, spreading it out into an even layer. And also during this dehydration, I also added a few onions to be dehydrated as well. And we'll use that as well in our nacho cheese powder. Now I place the powder into the dehydrator and let it go for an additional 8 hours. Now if you use a smaller shred of cheese, you may only need to do this once, but you're gonna have to be the judge on how dry it is. And this is gonna really depend on the dehydrator that you use, the cheese that you use, and also the specific shred of cheese that you use. Now the goal is to end up with a cheese like this, which is slightly oily, but more or less dry. Alright, now it's just a matter of grinding up the onions and cheese into a powder fine enough to coat our tortilla chips. So just go ahead and place the onions off to the side, and we're gonna start to try to grind the cheese. Now at first I tried to place it in the blender, but that was complete folly. So I went back to the old school method of mortar and pestle, which worked fine. I collected all of the ground up cheese into a bowl, and as I said before, I'm only gonna use about half this cheese. The other half's gonna go towards next week's video. Alright, now it's time to work on the onions. Place the dehydrated onions into the mortar and pestle and just begin smashing. We want to grind it into small pieces, just like we did with the cheese. Now don't worry about those flecks of onions, we're gonna take care of those in a few minutes. Now go ahead and add the cheese back into the mortar and pestle and mix it all up. And now we're gonna also take this opportunity to add the other ingredients that make up the nacho cheese powder. So starting with 1 teaspoon of coriander, although this one's kind of optional. However, not optional is 2 teaspoons of chipotle powder and also 1 teaspoon of cumin. Next, to add with color, I'm going to add about 1 teaspoon of turmeric, and the last ingredient we optionally can add is 1 teaspoon of something called Annato Seed Powder. Now this may be hard to find, but we're mostly using this for color anyways. It will give the powder that characteristic red color that Doritos have. However, again, this is just for color and is really optional, so if you can't find it, you can still make this and it'll taste great. Alright, now mix this up and there we go. This is our Dorito powder and it looks pretty good. But one last step we want to do is we want to strain off any large pieces, like those flecks of onion from earlier. Now feel free to smash and grind any leftover pieces through the sieve, just so we don't make sure that we waste anything. And now we should have a nice, fine nacho cheese powder, and it's time to make the chips. So making the chips is actually a lot easier than you might expect if you've never done this before. Simply just cut up 4 to 8 taco-sized corn tortillas into quarters, and place them on a tray and set them off to the side. Now we're going to heat up a pan or pot to fry these in, and you want to fill that pan or pot with neutral oil such as vegetable oil or canola oil. We don't need a large amount of oil for this, and we do want to make sure we have enough room as well so that we don't overfill this. Now go ahead and heat the oil up till it comes to about 350 degrees Fahrenheit or about 175 degrees Celsius. And once it does, feel free to add in a test chip, and it should bubble like this. Once you can see that your test chip is crisping up nicely, go ahead and add in a few chips at a time, making sure not to overcrowd the pan. Now be careful of how you place them in. Remember that this is a hot oil, so splashes deal damage. Now let them fry on one side for about 3 to 4 minutes and then flip them and let them go for another 2. But honestly, the best way to go is based off color. Once they start to turn brown, go ahead and pull them out and let them drain on a rack or sieve for the excess oil to drain off. Repeat this process with the next batch of tortillas until we have everything fried up. Alright, so once they're cool enough to work with, go ahead and toss our nacho cheese powder in with the tortillas and really give them a good mix. This may take a minute or so for them to really kind of stick to the chips, but we really do want to make sure that they have some powder on them. All right, now at this point, shake off any excess powder, and that's it. We're done. Go ahead and plate these up and serve, and they were really delicious. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing so you don't miss next week's video on how to make instant mac and cheese. You guys actually decided in the poll which order these videos came out in, so if you want to say and future decisions that I make, be sure to check out the communities tab, or also being subscribed will help you see them in your feed. All right, I'll see you guys next week. All right, bye.